Internet Festival. Forme di futuro.
Hi, I'm Montgomery. I'm really excited to join you from New York City, where I live. This is my first time in Pisa. I'm really excited to be here. And I am the founding director of the Museum of Impact, the world's first mobile social justice museum. I believe museums should be in service to society and that art and culture and social justice is the perfect pair. I want to show you a video of the sort of work that we do and then talk more about where the idea came from. This video is of a pop-up exhibit we did with the Brooklyn Museum this past year, and it was celebrating Black Lives Matter and the Black radical tradition. Enjoy.
Montgomery, and I'm the founding director and curator of the Museum of Impact, the world's first mobile social justice museum. We're popping up at the Brooklyn Museum for First Saturdays, interpreting the Black radical tradition and Black Lives Matter. The Black radical tradition has such deep roots and foundation in the core of who we are as people of color, and I wanted to highlight all that's come before us that's led up to this moment in time. This is a watershed moment for civil rights, for human rights, and we just believe that there are so many activists and advocates and thinkers and public intellectuals that need to be in the public consciousness and need to have a light shined on them, and so we're here to do that work tonight.
So that's an example of a museum of impact experience. We, thank you, are doing what most museums aren't, which is tackling social injustice. We're tackling Black Lives Matter. We're tackling immigration, gentrification, homelessness, environmental causes, all the things that we hear about in the news, and sometimes we feel helpless to touch. We don't know how to solve it, but we're working with artists, with communities, with partners to create meaningful, intentional exhibits that explore these issues. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Black Lives Matter. Okay, so that might be like 1/8 of this room. Well, it's a hashtag that was started in the wake of the tragedies of Black, Brown, Latino, Native American people being killed in America. It since went viral and spread around the world and is used often when something tragic happens around police brutality, around vigilantes that are killing people of color, also celebrating lives, Black people that are doing amazing things, other people of color that are celebrating lives and living more abundantly. So the Black Lives Matter movement, which was a hashtag on the internet that has spawned a whole social justice movement, is what inspired me to create an exhibit. The exhibit that you saw was called it's called The Movement is Rising. And it was the premise that I wanted to do something before I was even in museums. Let me backtrack a second. I used to be a preschool teacher in a Reggio Emilia school in America. And when all of these things started happening with Trayvon Martin and Sandra Bland and Mike Brown and all of the people of color that were getting slain, my kids, my students would come up to me and say, "Miss Montgomery, what's happening? I'm hearing things in the news. My parents are sad. I don't know what's happening. I feel anxious. I feel scared." And from those little children telling me that they needed help processing and contextualizing and understanding what was going on in society, I created a curriculum that eventually developed into The Movement is Rising, because I figured if children needed help understanding these issues, this terrible plague that society has around violence and inequity and oppression, then adults needed that same help too. So the event that you saw at that Brooklyn Museum had over 3,000 people come out in a matter of 3 hours, which was really significant and one of the biggest events we've ever done, and I'm really proud of that. What we did as far as the internet was use the hashtag Movement is Rising, which is also the name of the exhibit, to get people talking about these issues. Whether they took a picture for Instagram, they tweeted something, they put something on Facebook, Snapchat, Tumblr, we encouraged them to use the hashtag Movement is Rising. And during the pop-up that we did, that hashtag was trending. We're very social media friendly. I feel like our museum was born of the internet, and I'm a very heavy internet social media user. To speak to the earlier presenter's point about social media influence, because of the following that I've had the opportunity to do that empty Met tour. I've gone to the new Smithsonian, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and been able to tweet and post about my experience. So it is true, when you build a social media following, a lot of times museums and other cultural institutions want to host you in their spaces to share with their group. So with the Museum of Impact, our aim is to inspire action at the intersection of art, activism, self, and society. We're doing this in several ways: by pop-up exhibits, by doing events, we create curriculum, and we've recently started an interactive experience called Activist Love Letters, which I will share about briefly. So, Activist Love Letters, it's a media education project that's shining a light on the bravery and the brilliance of activists and activism. So often, people don't understand what an activist does. They don't understand how they could get involved and do more in their own way. And it seems like a mystery to them. Like, what could I ever do to make the world a better place? Well, activists and organizers and other people in that milieu are folks that are on the front lines of that work. And we're having people write letters to them of affirmation, of support, of sometimes critical analysis, but starting to discuss what is activism, what do they do, and how others can envision themselves getting more involved. Like I said, the exhibit and this experience was born out of the Black Lives Matter hashtag and movement, but that's not all that we tackle. There are several things that people can write about with the activist love letters, and it's really meant to inspire everyday people to find the inner activist in that spirit within themselves. So when you come to the space, we have you go through a series of activities talking about the causes that you care about. You get to vote on what needs fixing, what's the most urgent issue in the world. We then have you write a letter, and you can pick 3 different types of letters to write. You can write to a local leader, write to your future self as someone who's more engaged in activism, or to a public figure, or what we call a modern movement builder, someone like Barack Obama or Jesse Williams, or someone who's known nationally. And then we're teaching people about everyday folks and public figures that are doing this work at the forefront of championing change. There's a lot of art making, there's a lot of dialogue, but it's really meant to get people engaged in the process. These women are the 3 co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement: Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Cullors. They started this so long ago when there was a killing of an African-American person, and the hashtag emerged. And since they've been organizing to create a movement that affirms Black life. Before I started the exhibit that I built and curated and invited artists, I consulted with them and I asked them for permission to do this work because I didn't want to appropriate their hashtag, and I wanted to get their buy-in to what we were doing, and they were very happy that we would even think to do a museum exhibit about it in a space where museums are really not touching these issues. Our process for the activist love letters experience: stand up, speak up, and act up. And we also have a portion of this that we do with younger audiences, with youth. It's a curriculum that we can do either a 4-week or an 8-week program, and really helping youth articulate and advocate and do art making around these same themes. This is an image of a workshop we did in Miami. We had about 50 high schoolers, and getting them to think about issues that were local to them and their causes. So in Miami, there was an incident where a man was shot who was an attendant to a youth who had special needs. And we talked about that and how so often the special needs community goes underserved when these things are happening. These are more images from the exhibit. So the activist love letters experience happens in the exhibit and outside of the exhibit. We've brought it to universities, to schools, to community centers, to churches, and we get people talking and writing. We produce art, we reproduce art in the form of posters and vinyl banners that's touchable, that's tactile, so people can write out what they feel about the issues on a Post-it and stick it directly on the art piece, which is something else, again, that you're not gonna see in traditional museums. We invite kids, parents, folks of all ages to share their thoughts. And this particular art piece is called Every Mother's Son. One of our artivists, that's an artist and an activist, one of our artivists in residence, Sophia Dawson, created this, showing the mothers of the movement, mothers of people that have lost, mothers of sons that have been killed by police. So they've been affected by violence, and we're recreating those murals in cities around the country. We believe at the Museum of Impact that we have to foster this third space to welcome discussion and dialogue. We feel like silence makes you complicit. So violence is a national issue, not just for Black people or Latino people or white people, but for all of us. And we all have this responsibility to act. So in creating a third space, we have to dig deep in these issues and really talk about what's happening and not be afraid to broach those topics. We're always trying to encourage our visitors to transform from a bystander to an upstander. A bystander is someone who's present at an event, but kind of just watches, doesn't really get involved, just a passive individual. What we consider an upstander is someone who's standing up, who's speaking out, and who's taking action in defense of truth, well-being, and justice. So how can you become an upstander? By engaging with our exhibit, by writing these letters, by talking about these issues. It's a step on the process. We don't prescribe what exactly you should do, but rather give you channels and inroads to take more action and connect you to local charities and nonprofits doing the work. These are more images from the exhibit. We have an interactive section of the exhibit called The Unindicted. And this is one of my sorority sisters who's standing next to the sign. So when I do pop-ups, a lot of times I have sorority sisters and friends help me staff and manage the crowds because it's like so many people. So the sign reads, These officers got away with murder. React. We create a circle of chairs, and we have images of the police and the vigilantes that have killed Black and brown people. We put kind of wanted ads, signs on these chairs. And then we have a variety of tools, staplers, scissors, markers, suction darts. And we tell people, take your frustration, your rage, your sadness, your anger out on this paper, because so often in society we're forced not to respond, not to have an emotional, visceral response, but we're encouraging that in the Museum of Impact. We want you to grieve and grow. We want you to have that cathartic experience. And people have done all sorts of things. This is one of the more popular features of our pop-up. People rip up the paper. Sometimes they throw it in the garbage. Sometimes they draw on it. Sometimes they sit there and look at the image and cry. It's a very emotional experience, but it's helping them process through those feelings and not push them down and not numb them, but resolve in yourself. You're going to feel this. You're going to be in solidarity with people of color, and you're going to take a stand. Excuse me. This is a meme that's been going around. Memes are created on the internet and kind of illustrating different social points. The question is, why did you shoot me? And the answer is, I don't know. And that's America. That's the stance America's been taking so often. Another image on the right, we show images of activists in context with civil rights activists. So the modern Black Lives Matter activists and modern movements, we're showing they're just as important as folks like Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King had a quote, "This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." And we have a collage of images of people of color who are organized and activists all around him that are taking that action. Lastly, our motto, and I have this on my pen, hear, care, act. When you come to our museum, we don't want you to just come and look and leave. We don't want you to say, wow, that's powerful, or that's sad. Someone should do something, and leave unchanged. We want to transform you from a bystander to an upstander. If you're hearing and you start to care and you take action, that's what's going to make our world a better place. And we believe that visitors can co-create this space with us. We are not the top-down authority. We're in community, sharing the authority with them. We want visitors to envision their role in championing change and finding intersections between their lived experience, social issues of the day, and transforming from upstanders to bystanders. These are more images from the exhibit that we did at the Brooklyn Museum and other exhibits we've done. We've done 15 pop-ups to date around the Eastern Seaboard, and we're starting to work with museums on the West Coast, in the Midwest, and the South to do exhibits there. We're very interested in looking at issues that are happening here in Europe, in the Middle East, and creating meaningful exhibits around that as well. Just to show an interesting response of an artist, this is not in our collection, but we're working on it. This is a student artist at Temple University, which is my alma mater in Philadelphia. And on her campus, one night after another killing, she got so fed up and so enraged, she wanted to use her art to say something. She wanted to take a stand with her art. She's a sculpture artist, and so she created this installation. And it simply says, white people, period, do something. And the reason that she put this is because she realizes for racial equity and justice to happen, it's going to take everyone of all colors, but especially the white people who have the privilege and the power in our society. We need them helping to catalyze these movements. This image has gone viral on the internet. There's been a number of threats that she's received, and the university has round-the-clock security watching the piece, but they haven't taken it down because they realize the importance of what's being said. So, stand up, speak up, and act up. Speaking up, we're encouraging visitors to find their voice, and some encourage to articulate hopes and dreams, and honoring the activist process. We often in our exhibit space have images of activists and activist acts like petitions and sit-ins and rallies to encourage people. We don't think that's the only way to affect change, but it definitely makes a mark. And then writing these letters, of course, to folks that are doing that work is part of the speaking up process. And lastly, acting up. Whether you're volunteering or you're getting involved in politics, you're protesting, or you're using education or art, we believe that people make change. And we're champions of inspired action and the change that people can make. We want all members of the public to do something, do more than you did the day before, and champion what you care about, because we can't keep waiting for someone else to solve this. There is no savior coming. We're the ones that we've been waiting for. On the top right of this slide, we have what we call Assata's chant. Assata Shakur, who was a freedom fighter in the early 70s and still advocates from Cuba, has written this kind of like a manifesto. And so at our exhibits, we encourage people to chant this with us. And it says, "It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." Lastly, the Activist Love Letter experience, we want people to take home a sense of responsibility and accountability to be active citizens and claim their civic power. So this Upstanders Pledge is something that we encourage people to say, to sign, and it's hanging in the space, very large. And it reads simply, "The ripple effect you can have on the world is boundless. The world needs your secret sauce to fix the myriad of issues facing society. Your first challenge to channeling your inner activist is deciding how you want to respond. Current events happen daily that inflict trauma and terror on our people, our land, our freedoms, our beliefs, and our unity. For us to interact meaningfully with social movements, it's up to us to find ways to stand, speak, and act." I encourage you to visit us online at museumofimpact.org. Follow us at Museum of Impact on Twitter and Instagram, and look up the hashtag Movement is Rising. Thank you so much.
Internet Festival. Forme di futuro.